Good morning and happy triumphant Tuesday. As I was studying this morning in Genesis, it just really rang in my heart where God said to Abraham, "Is there anything too hard for me?" And I thought about, so many times in life we are at a place where maybe God has promised us something and it's been a long time ago and it looked like there's no possible way that what God has promised that it could happen. Our circumstances may have changed and it looked like that what God said was impossible. You may be dealing with a sickness today that man says there's no cure. You may be in a place where you haven't done any savings for retirement and now you're old and you're saying, oh man, what am I going to do? There's no way I'm going to be able to survive retirement. You know what? There's nothing, absolutely nothing too hard for God. You may even have kids today that are wayward. And you prayed and you prayed and you prayed, and it looks like there's nothing going to turn them around because they're so hard-hearted. I want to tell you today, there's nothing too hard for God. Let's look at Genesis chapter 18 today. This is what Genesis 18 and 14 says. Is there anything too hard for the Lord? At the time appointed, I will return unto thee according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. If you don't know the story, Sarah and Abraham was very old. They had no children of their own, not together. And God had promised that Sarah will bore a seed from Abraham, and the nations of the world would be blessed because of that seed. But you see, there was a problem. Sarah was old. Her womb was shut up because she gave birth when she was 90 years old, and Abraham was 100. See, God visited Abraham and Sarah, and he made a promise to them. You're going to have a seed, and it's going to come from Sarah. But it seemed impossible. See, Sarah was way past childbearing age. The Bible said that even when the angels of the Lord, when God told them this, that Sarah laughed. Not out of joy, but she laughed because she didn't believe the word. From a human standpoint, that promise seemed unreasonable. It really seemed absurd. There's no way that can happen. But see, God responds with a question. And that question echoes through generations. Is there anything too hard for the Lord? By Genesis 21, what seemed impossible becomes a reality. Isaac is born. That laughter, that doubt, turned into laughter because of the fulfillment. There's so many reasons in life. There's seasons where God promises seem delayed. I know for me, I was promised something from God 30-something years ago, and it just seemed so delayed. It seemed like it wasn't going to happen. It seemed like the state that I was in was finalized. But you know, God today, what we have to realize, he's not limited by time. He's not limited by age. He's not limited by resources or even human reasoning. That seems impossible. But there's nothing impossible for God. You may be at a place today that the doctors have said, your sickness is incurable. You're going to die. You know, there's nothing impossible to God. You may be at a place where your prayer seems to be unanswered. You may have been praying and praying and praying for your lost loved ones to come to Jesus Christ. But you know, God reminds us that he works on an appointed time, not our timeline, but on his divine schedule. This is what I want to seed I want to drop in your heart today. God doesn't forget his promises. He's not like man that may forget. He may overlook. God doesn't forget his promises. He never arrives late. He is always on time. You know, he's never limited by what limits us. God is saying, put our trust in him even when things seem impossible. I'm here today to let you know there is absolutely nothing impossible for God. No matter what you're going through, there's nothing impossible with God. Put your trust in him and sit back and wait on the Lord. He'll renew your strength. And his promises are yes and they're amen. They're yes and they're for us. Put your trust in God because there's nothing impossible with him. Until next time, may God richly bless you.